Before we go any further, please hit that subscribe and or follow button in front of you. It's a key performance indicator for the podcast and we really appreciate it.
This wasn't our first trip to Ukraine. Because obviously the war happened, changed our priorities. The decision was made. Everything that could have gone wrong has gone wrong.
Since 2007, the Scottish Emergency Rescue Association has delivered over 71 fully equipped fire engines and ambulances to countries such as Moldova, Ukraine, Serbia, Romania, and Burundi. In addition to the donation of equipment, Sarah has trained hundreds of local firefighters in each of the host countries in order so that they can safely use and maintain the equipment and vehicles provided while serving their communities. Now, I know we will all be aware of the incredible challenges being faced by the people of Ukraine, and Sarah started planning to respond and support our fire service colleagues in Ukraine in December 2021. Sarah has recently donated fire engines and equipment to Ukraine, and today we're hearing from Mike, who's one of the firefighters that has taken part in training and facilitating these trips in the past and was part of the most recent transport operation delivering this life-saving equipment to the people of Ukraine.
Problem now we had is that the trucks are being left in Ukraine and we need to walk back into Hungary. This suddenly is a problem. I don't think we appreciate that. That passport lets me leave the country that is at war, and other people are not allowed to do that just purely because the accident of birth came to this world a different bit of land.
The Firefighters Podcast is a global podcast seeking to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operators. We have wide-ranging conversations celebrating those within our emergency services family and encouraging the support of this incredible group of people. It's hosted by myself, operational UK firefighter Pete Wakefield. Please support your emergency services wherever you are in the world, and thank you for listening. How you doing, brother?
I'm good. How is things with you?
I am bloody fantastic, my man. Kicking ass, taking names. Glad to hear you are safe. Glad to hear you back.
It was nothing.
the typical response of a firefighter. Yeah, it was nothing, man. It's just one of them things we do. That's just what we do.
It's just part of the job.
Mate, I imagine, and I don't know, I know it's something we're going to get into today. It was very much kind of probably hurry up and wait in many instances. And I know a lot of time in emergency services, for a lot of people don't realise there's a lot of standing around, and then it's go, and then it's stop, and then it's wait for permission, then it's go.
Definitely was. And to be fair, it was probably one of the more challenging trips because everything that could have gone wrong has gone wrong. So, but again, we've come to the other side, and it's just the joy of actually being done successful. And yeah, I'm very happy with how it went.
A quick update from one of our partners and we'll be right back to the show. Today's episode was brought to you by our partner William Wood Watches. Now in support of the Firefighters charity, William Wood Watches, who are the makers of those beautiful luxury watches from upcycled firefighting equipment, are bringing you the always ready motorcycle. It's super essential to make you aware of this one, folks, because there are only 300 tickets available. William Wood Watches have partnered with the talented Sultan Motorcycles, and they're bringing you the first William Wood Watches motorcycle. This is incorporating the workings of all of their watches and adorned with multiple elements of upcycled firefighting materials. This is a one-off motorcycle, and it's like nothing you've ever seen before. It can only be won if you're in the prize draw. You can enter the prize draw if you follow the link in the post below this episode. All profits raised from the sale of the Always Ready motorbike will be donated to the Firefighters charity in the UK, supporting firefighters and their families. Not only does making a purchase from William Wood Watches mean you will get your hands on one of those beautiful and authentic luxury pieces of firefighting nostalgia, but you will be supporting this effort and giving a donation to the people that operate in our sector. Now back to the show. I was blown away that, I suppose I wasn't. I was totally surprised when it's one of them serendipitous things. I'll get my words out in a minute. Finding out that you were a part of this was surreal, but in a strange way, not entirely surprising. So you and I have been conversing for quite some time, and you are, I'm going to say you're one of the rare individuals, and I'm going to say that, kind of like me, that is so sincerely, deeply dedicated to trying to see the best of the people that are in the emergency services and raise those standards and, do what you morally think is right. And we've had lots of conversations over probably the past sort of 2 years. You've given loads of sort of support and guidance and little nudges here and there and stuff with the podcast. You've introduced us to some incredible guests, some of the best guests we've ever had. And I know you've supported us with a massive list of people, but that is not what we're here talking about today. You've just come back from I'll let you go through it. You've just come back from a pretty surreal experience, I imagine.
Yes, although I think for us it's a bit different because, this wasn't our first trip to Ukraine. We didn't react to the war as in many people did by going into the unknown. Because we were there before, we knew people there. We've trained the firefighters there. I did personally. So we had contacts, and for us, it was a lot more than just deliver another truckload of equipment or fire engines. Mm-hmm. It was actually to go through and help our friends.
Which is quite a surreal thing for a lot of people, because we have seen in the best of intentions and all that sort of stuff, we've seen a lot of knee-jerk reaction, which is great, and we want people, when there's a massive call to arms as such, we want people to reach down within themselves, whether that's personally, financially, with their skill sets, with their resources, vehicles, connections, whatever it may be. And that's kind of what we're doing here today, really, is to support the effort like this. But take us back, because like you've just said, this wasn't completely unknown territory for you. You've been doing a lot of work with the Scottish Emergency Rescue Association for quite some time now. And how has this relationship with places like Ukraine, which is only one of sort of many areas that the organisation supports, when did that first come about? Because you've been doing this sort of stuff for a little while now, or certainly the organisation has.
Yes. So just very, very quickly. So SERA, the Scottish Emergency Rescue Association, has started in 2007 with a trip to Serbia, if I remember correctly. And since then has been supporting emergency services in the countries maybe less fortunate than ourselves. I have started with them about 2000, maybe 18 or 17. I went to Moldova first. We took, I think, 5 or 6 fire engines and then stayed there for a week worth of training. And then it progressed on to other trips. And in 2019, we went to Ukraine. And that was for the first time, because like Moldova trips, we were going there every year for last 15 years. But 2019 trip to Ukraine was the first one of its kind. We never been to Ukraine before. So it was a bit of an unknown. And at the time, we've delivered 30 fire engines and training. There were some guys from UKRAINE there delivering extrication training as well at the same time. So we cooperated with them.
I think that's Steve. That's Steve and the work that he'd done. So Steve North. You know how like when you get, we've gone halfway around the world in something. That's a bit of an exaggeration. We've travelled to places a long way off, and it's so strange when you get there and then you realise there's a very close connection with somebody that's already within your sort of social circle. So you mentioned, Serbia. I've literally, at the beginning of the year, because I know we spoke after we put the podcast out, that we're over there speaking with John Doon, speaking about the work United Nations have done, and they literally referred to Sarah, to people like Firefighter, to the United Nations, about the very work that will have been, not necessarily yourself, but will have been you and other individuals in those organisations. And you can travel all that way and somebody goes, oh, well, you probably won't know about it, but we got so-and-so was over here in 2007. And I'm like, I know that dude. I literally know that. I know those people. And you're like, it shouldn't be surprising because, Steve Jobs always says connecting the dots, looking backwards. And when you look and you're like, these sort of people are going to place themselves in those situations, not because those situations present themselves, because of the type of person that they are. And it seems like things like Sarah and stuff like that and UKRAINE attracts those kinds of die-hard, passionate, do the right thing kind of people. And you see them crop up everywhere then.
Definitely. And what the funny thing is that on all of those trips, every new chance to network with another organization you meet new people, and they're always great people. But at the same time, after a few years, you start noticing that you see or hear the same names being mentioned, and I think in general, that circle of, as you say, quite enthusiastic people or freaks, is quite small. Once you get into it and you start meeting people, talking with people, and that more than anybody else doing the podcast, that then you kind of entered in a circle, and it's great within it.
Do you know what the irony is, though? There's no... Well, okay, I was going to say there's no cost to get in that circle, and there isn't a cost. It's be a good person, be passionate about what you do for a living, do the right thing. And that sometimes that's not a rare thing, because there's a lot of wonderful people out there, but it's that combination of being audacious enough to put your hand up and go, I think that's the right thing to do. I want to get involved in that. I don't know how to do it. I don't know what it is. I've got some skill sets that I can offer. And you'd be surprised the amount of people that go, yes, 100%, come here, go there, if you can jump on this train or if you can get on that flight. So that's the irony of it. People think that, like, oh, well, there's like a special handshake group, or you've got to pay a membership to be here. It's nothing like that. It's just be a good person. And, you know, if you think that something's the right thing to do, raise your hand, put your head above the parapet. Because the amount of people, and I'd be interested to hear from you, you know, do you ever have those people that are like, oh, yeah, you going off on this other thing again, Mike? You know, you're off on a bit of a gallivanting, you're off on your little crazy trip, you're off on your stamping your feet, raising your arms in the air, and you're like, dude, and that I don't rise to it now as much as I used to, but that is, God, man, I hate that. You must get that sometimes.
It's more the case of the trips sometimes are seen by the people from out with this sector, or out with, not involved in charity like that, as some kind of jolly, you know, that will go across for a week's holiday basically. And to be fair with you, because I love my job, you know, and I like spending time with other firefighters. Whether I'm teaching them or they teaching me, it doesn't really matter, because we're all learning something.
And I know that's true for you, because what they don't see, like they might see the jolly and then point the finger at the jolly. They don't see the hours and hours you spend on the phone to people from all over the world, just trying to, you know, make yourself a more well-rounded consummate professional. They don't see you paying your own money to go to the high-rise seminars and you know, all of those small things that are done in the darkness. And then all of a sudden you're asked to bring your skill sets to an opportunity like this. It's all the unknowns. You know, it's like, you know, Muhammad Ali says, you know, it's one in the gym. And, you know, I always talk about grinding in the darkness to serve the light and all that sort of stuff. And that's where most of it is. You know, it's that torturous hours where you're constantly trying to seek the answers and connect with the people. Nobody sees that bit. Totally.
And especially, you know, with every one of those trips, the preparation for it will start months in advance. For example, for this Ukraine trip, because obviously the war happened, changed our priorities. We weren't meant to go to Ukraine this year at all. We were planning to go to Moldova in May. So the cogs were turning and wheels were in motion for that trip. And we were collecting equipment, you know, sourcing fire engines, packing it all up. And basically, when the war broke out, the decision was made: why don't we got another 3 fire engines from Scottish Fire Rescue Service, and we then added one from the stock that we had for Moldova, and basically we made the trip within 2 weeks, and that was 2 weeks of somebody, not necessarily myself, every day, but throughout the 2 weeks, every day somebody was down at the unit that we've got, grafting, you know, testing the BA sets, testing the equipment, fixing the trucks, whatever needs done. And there is hundreds of things to be done before a trip like that. But unfortunately, people not involved in it only see the glory bit at the end, that's in the newspaper or on TV, that we are leaving for Ukraine. But
when you say, who wants to come down and size all the fire kit and write it all down on a piece of paper? Who wants to, you know, make sure all the cylinders are empty because we can't transport, or whatever, you know, whatever the regulation might be. Nobody sees. I always see this with the ISAR team, because we have logistics teams and stuff like that. And every time we go on and even just a training deployment in the UK, the base of operations, they get out like 50 tents. It must be more than that. It takes us like 2 hours to put them up. And then every time they go back, you know, there's a group of like 5 or 6 individuals that have to get them all out again and have to dry them all up. They have to put them all up in basically like a warehouse. And that work is just dull as balls. You know, if you're not sincerely interested in what it takes to put something like this together, you know, the amount of people who raise their hand, I'm sure, for stuff like Sarah, like this, and go, oh yeah, I can go out on the 11th, I'm available for the flight. And you're like, good, because it starts on the 5th and we're going to do 6 days. of sorting through stuff, of checking the tire pressures, of, I know you had issues with the DVLA and all of those small things that are essential footsteps to get you on the start line, not even, on the journey, just to get to the start line. There's a whole journey in itself. Definitely.
You're totally right. And as you say, it does take months of planning. And then when it comes to the trip, and especially in this case, because the Ukraine was obviously quite, everybody was aware of it.
Yeah.
And once everybody wanted to say, oh, I can help, I can drive, if possible, can I go as well? Can I go as well? But then to say to people, oh, if you want to help, just come down and sort PPE.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it's like, I've got, I'm washing my hair that day.
There's a very strange thing people don't realize. There's a lot of disaster tourists, and I've heard them. I'm not going to throw stones or anything. I'm not going to name any names, but obviously I listen to a lot of podcasts and all this sort of stuff. And you hear people saying, I felt the urge to go over to Ukraine because I needed to witness it. And I keep listening, and I'm like, so what was the value you added whilst you were there, or were you just there taking pictures, getting freaking selfies, And I'm like, what was your business or your organization or your skill set? Okay, you hear about doctors and vets and school teachers turning up, and that's great, But then when you just hear somebody go, I just needed to see it for myself, right? Well, we can't have a goddamn audience because there's enough disaster freaking tourists that just slow stuff down, and they become part of the problem, because when you're there, like yourselves as an emergency services organization, or you're part of a United Nations organization, or just in-country organization, you are now somebody that needs to be facilitated for. You are in the count. Totally. You are like, there's 500 members of the public here, there's 5 citizens here. You're one of them. You're part of the problem now, because you might become a victim, you might become a casualty, you might just get stuck there, and they go, we've got 20 UK nationals stuck in Ukraine. They freaking went there themselves. They pushed themselves across the border with no ability to add any value. They just went. You guys were a fantastic inject. You were like in, out, add value, give the resources, and and then give them the support they need. I wanted to double click for a second, because I don't want us to brush over it, on the fact that when you said, all this stuff was prepped for Moldova originally. That must have been a really, really, and I know it wasn't, you're obviously part of the organization, but the decision from whoever had to make it to say, we're going to pull it off there to go to send it here. But it's such a nice analogy as well for the emergency services, because people always forget, when you're one place, you're not another. And as obvious as that sounds, when we go to fire calls or emergency services, or, paramedics are stuck with somebody, they're there, and it means they can't be somewhere else helping somebody else. And this is like a wonderful closed loop example of where someone had to make that difficult decision, because the people of Moldova, still need that support. They still have their challenges as well. And I know you say you've sourced another 3, and I know that this cycle continues to go, but that's got to be a difficult decision to make.
Definitely, and I'm not pretending to be in any way responsible for that, because obviously Gary Bennett, who's in charge of SERA, he does amazing work.
Great guy, love that guy.
But at the same time, I think because we've got quite a working relationship with Moldovan Fire Service, as I said, we've been there for years now. We have actually reached the stage where, for example, the whole of Moldova is using MSA BA sets that we have supplied.
That's crazy. That is so crazy.
So basically, we as SERA supplied the whole country of BA sets, so they've got the uniformed approach to it.
How has that become a need? And I'm not talking MSA, I'm not talking Viking, but like we have this elitist thing, and then again, perspective is such a beautiful thing, because you only know, it's the unknown unknowns. You only see what's as part of your world, and when you go there and you see the level of equipment that they have and don't have, and organizations and governments and stuff like ours are giving that aid. What was it like the first time you guys went to Moldova and saw the state or the lack of equipment? What was a normal fire engine look like over there before organizations like SERA get involved?
Majority of them in those countries that used to be maybe communist countries or under Soviet influence, a lot of their equipment is still post-Soviet kind of 80s, big trucks.
Yeah,
like actually quite similar to the trucks that now you see in Ukrainian war for Russian army uses, or you maybe have seen them in Chernobyl series on whatever it was, on Netflix or Amazon.
Netflix. I think it was Netflix.
So these basically, especially when we went to Ukraine the first time, those were exact vehicles that they still have. And the equipment it varies greatly, because the guys in the maybe capital city will have the stuff that puts us into shame, but then you go outside of that and it's really, really poor, with few lengths of hose and a pump, and that's all they've got.
That's a surreal thought. So run us through what actually went. Where did you go? How did you get there? And what did you actually take? Because it kept growing and growing. You had some wonderful donations. And was it?
Right. So to Ukraine for this trip, we'll concentrate on this trip because obviously this is the most recent one.
Yeah.
We've took 4 fire engines and 1 18-ton lorry of equipment. The lorry, we have bought that lorry as a charity a couple of years ago, or maybe 3 years ago. So now we just use, because we always had more equipment than fire engines.
Yeah.
And we couldn't possibly send all the equipment we wanted just by packing the lockers.
Nah, people forget that the lockers don't really fit as much as you think they do. They're designed for quick access. They're not designed for piling as much in there as possible. There's a lot of shelves and stuff that kind of get in the way, in all honesty, when you're trying to move it. This is 18-ton, like rigid. We'll use some photos of it for the stuff people see on the socials, but it's a rigid box 18-ton lorry.
Box lorry, yeah. And obviously with the fire engine, the problem is that when you on the trip like that, you're carrying 1,800 liters of fresh air in the middle between those lockers, which you can't fill with anything.
Exactly, yeah.
So basically the idea was to buy a box lorry, and then we can transport, especially PPE, and then bring the lorry back. So that's what we've done for the last couple of years. And I'll maybe mention later about the relay that the lorry did on its own. That was some feat that we've done a couple of years ago. But let's go back to Ukraine. So 4 fire engines and the box lorry full of equipment, and the box, and I mean full of equipment. The lorry was packed to the ceiling, with the heavy stuff like cutting equipment, the ballistic equipment on the bottom, pumps.
Yeah, I saw all the pumps. Just like there's 2 or 3 of them not sticking out the back, but they were like some of the last things to go on. Because again, you've got to think of all the little, the weight balance and the placement of everything. Because some of this kit's heavy. Oh,
definitely. We had to load up, and then we've got a friendly weighbridge quite close to our yard, so we were just going in and out all the time. And the people there are very, very nice to us, allow us to weigh it for free. So obviously we were making sure at all times that we are above the law as well.
Yeah.
But the lorry eventually ended up packed to the roof with the PPE, with the fire gear. It was unbelievable.
That's like a weird game of Jenga in itself, isn't it?
It totally is. It totally is. And it was, to be fair, when we were unpacking it in Ukraine, it was we couldn't pull it out. It was so well packed that we couldn't pull the fire gear out. But anyway, so the unfortunate events started very early on, because we left the UK, or we left Edinburgh on the day that the P&O fiasco happened. P&O Ferry.
Because we've been having some comms through this, and you were sending me photos, and like you were just stuck. It was like, you couldn't do game over before you'd even left the UK. But the eternal problem solvers that I know the emergency services are, but that was just really bad timing.
It was quite a downer, for everybody, because we were supposed to go to Hull and take a ferry down to Rotterdam, I think, and that was obviously a P&O ferry. So that was out of the question. And because of the P&O problems, all the other ferries like the FDS were overrun by freight and lorries. So we looked for alternatives, maybe from Newcastle to Amsterdam, but that was booked solid for another 3-4 days. So eventually
it's got to be bloody ridiculously expensive as well. I'm in those types of times where you're effectively, you're competing against organisations and businesses, and to get these spots, to get a vehicle like that on there. And at the end of the day, it's a charity. You're doing this for international aid. But, and this is no damning on any of the ferry companies or anybody else, but nobody cares, but it's like, dude, it's a place on a ferry and they're trying to run a business. So it's going to get expensive quite quickly, I'd imagine.
That's it. And it's quite a funny thing is that for last couple of years, we actually had a deal with P&O ferries where we had half price ferry crossing.
Yeah.
So that's
got to come straight out of the budget, like you say, and it's got to be so frustrating, but it's part of the whole cogs of the vehicle that needs to get it there. Just a quick reminder of our monthly giveaway with our partner HAIX and Tallyman. If you jump over to our social media platforms, you can once again get a chance to win a pair of HAIX Black Eagle Adventure GTX boots. HAIX is one of the biggest and best brands in the boot market and now supplies armies around the world, equipping special units, firefighters, paramedics, police officers when it comes to high quality, high tech footwear. And from our partner Tallyman, you can get 2 personalized BA tallies with your name on them and the logo of the podcast on the back. Just head over to our social media channels and all the instructions are there. You got to scroll through, find the post, and get on it. Now back to the show.
Definitely. So first day of our driving, we got as far as I think Derby, and then we were basically stuck. We didn't for the evening. We just stopped and didn't know which way to go. You know, we even considered maybe going to Plymouth and taking a ferry from there to France. Yeah, which is obviously extending our route considerably. But if that was the only option, we would have done it.
It's progress, isn't it?
So definitely. So we stopped for the night, and we thought in the morning we were hoping that the P&O thing is going to just blow over. You know, the government maybe is going to step in, or P&O will rethink their strategy and get back to work or whatever. But obviously none of those things happened.
Yeah.
So then in the morning we just decided that we'll go to Dover, join the queue that was already considerable by that time, and just wait.
And when we say considerable, this was like as far as the eye can see. You know, when you send me those photos, this is lorries upon lorries upon lorries upon lorries. There was no end in sight for this. I'd just be demoralised saying that.
It was a good few miles.
Plus the fuel. But Jesus, man, the fuel costs that have just been exploding lately. The people must. There's just so many factors there.
Oh, believe me, Pete. When we were, because I was paying. Obviously, it's through the charity, but I was the person responsible for paying for fuel in my fire engine because there was 3 people in each fire engine. I was paying about £2.40 a litre in Germany.
You fighter! Hey, because we've been on like reserve stocks. We've been trying to hold reserve stocks in our service. And I remember we went and filled up the other day. We were supposed to fill them up every time they get to 3/4, but we've been out for ages, so it was down to like 1/4. And I swear to God, it was like 200 and something quid to fill it 3/4. And I was like, Jesus Christ, that is just unreal when you think about it. When you start turning the volume up on stuff like that, and we're not going to get into the political side of that, but it is just such. They've got you by the short and curly.
Definitely.
There's nothing you can do about it.
And you know, and for us having 5 lorries going, and now not only going maybe to Hull or to Newcastle, we have to go all the way to Dover, and then on the other side of the channel we're starting in France and not in Amsterdam. That adds another few £100
very quickly.
Yeah. So it seriously dents the money of the charity. Yeah. But at the same time, you know, we're so far involved that we're not going to turn around.
No, you've passed that point of no return. It's going. It's just like, just keep limping it there. Just keep going. Just get it there. Just get it there. Just get it over the line. So when did you actually arrive, and where did you arrive?
So we've arrived. We had brilliant help from one of my friends who arranged us a night in one of the fire stations just outside Budapest in Hungary.
Wow.
And we were supposed to have a night there, but because we had a few breakdowns and delays on the motorways in Germany, we arrived there at 4:00 in the morning. So it wasn't much of a night, because then we had to leave at 7 in the morning the next day.
What broke down? What did we start struggling with?
It's just trucks, you know, air leak on one. Then the weight in the other was in the box lorry was a bit too high up, and we had to rejig it. So a lot of things had to come out.
These are donated vehicles. Not donated, some are purchased, but most are donated vehicles to an extent, which means they are end of their life as per UK regulations and the way that the services like to keep their fleet maintained. So these these are not brand new vehicles. You know, somebody is nursing them through the process to even get them to a point where we feel comfortable to donate them to a country and, you know, be able to sort of put Sarah's name or put, you know, UK's name on it and go, this is a safe vehicle.
Definitely, and you know, we can't forget that these are fire engines. They've made, even if the mileage on them is high, the mileage probably was very sharp, short journeys.
Yeah,
you know,
people forget, and they think about their own vehicle. They would usually like turn it on the driveway, give it a couple of minutes. Firefighters, with the greatest of respect, we are knuckle dragging firefighters. We jump on it, we gun the hell out of it, we get it somewhere, we rag the arse off it by cranking the shaft up, and then we operate at high pressure. Then we switch it off straight away and go back to bed.
Definitely.
The mechanical sympathy that's done on that vehicle is not great, and they get dings and scratches and all sorts.
And suddenly, you know, after 20-year life of this vehicle like that, it's being asked to drive, 2,000 miles in one go. So it's a big shock to the system.
Yeah, it's a lorry, but it's not treated like any other lorry usually is. It's like the worst way to use a lorry is how we use them in the emergency services, basically.
Yeah, professional drivers would be tearing their hair out.
So when you managed to get, firstly, like when you got to Budapest, like all great fight, you didn't get there till 4 a.m. What was the reception like? You know, obviously you say you met up with a friend there. They sort you out some food, or what? How long were you able to stay there and catch up before you had to move on?
Oh, we had maybe 2-3 hours sleep there. I couldn't sleep because everybody was snoring anyway, so I just went upstairs to talk with the guys that were in the station, the Hungarians. They've made us breakfast and everything, so they were great.
What's breakfast look like in Budapest?
Just sandwiches with a bit of ham and cucumber and tomato in them, and you know. And to be fair with you, Pete, after 3 days of living off crisps and chocolate in the fire engine,
I'd have eaten anything.
Anything is a treat.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
So that was really nice. You know, they gave us a little tour of their station and showed their fire engines, and one of them was brilliant, by the way.
Yeah,
I've never seen anything like it in the UK. But anyway, so and then we set off. Again, we had a good. I don't know how to call that guy, but let's say call him a fixer. We had a good fixer in Hungary, and he was the kind of guy that looked after us. Again, for his, due to his charitable nature.
Yeah.
You know, he wasn't charging us for it, so he led us through Budapest, and then pointed us basically towards the border.
People forget how essential a good fixer is, to be honest, because they can save you so much money and so many mistakes and so many local, even just behavioural or cultural mishaps that you can very quickly cause offence or go in the wrong places, or, you know, all that sort of stuff. So they are a really crucial cog of this. He
saved us from so many mistakes.
Yeah.
And then right at the very end, where we thought we're home and dry, we maybe dropped the ball a little bit and totally got in trouble, and he had to get us out of it. So I'm not going to mention where we went for the border because the Ukrainian colleagues asked us not to disclose that.
Yeah.
But we did get to the border. There was a lot of wait. You know, you can imagine how all the customs paperwork, despite you're going with charitable donations, the customs paperwork still needs to be in order.
Yeah.
So it was taking good 5-6 hours of sitting at the border and just twiddling our thumbs.
Yeah. And like I say, when it comes to those disaster tourists, those sort of people clog those things up when, you know, people are just trying to get in and out for no reasons, where there's people in either trying to provide genuine care or support, or people just sincerely just trying to get out of there for their lives and their families and stuff like that.
But then the interesting thing happened, because initially the Ukrainians were supposed to come to us, to the Hungarian side of the border, and pick up the trucks.
Okay.
Then throughout the day, as we were driving to the border, they got in touch with us and said that the Hungarians will not let them in. So we need to, if possible, for us to leave Hungary and go into that kind of, you know, how old-fashioned borders work, that one country ends, then there is a little bit of no man's land, and then another country begins. So
why was
to
that
me,
then? I mean, again, we don't want to divulge anything that's not going to be in
no,
anybody's
but
best interest. But that must be what was the thought process behind that? Why were the barriers? Do you think?
oh, it's mainly the problems these days are because the males 18 to 60 can't leave Ukraine,
right?
Due to the war. So they are there for the war effort, and as much as this was obviously officially arranged with the Ukrainian fire service, so the Ukrainian side would have let them out, but Hungarians to save themselves any problems with that wouldn't let them in.
Yeah, because stuff can get twisted and everything like that. And if they hear six males were allowed to go, why? Who? Why? Or they were part of. Oh no, prove they were part of the fire service. They were just running, and now we should let everybody out. And it just creates a political nightmare.
Exactly. So we've agreed to leave Hungary and go into that no man's land.
Was there any reservation in doing that? I mean, was there any no. It's called no man's land for a reason, right? It's not the Wild West, but it's not a million miles away from it. There's probably things that happen in those areas that it's nobody's legislation, it's nobody's accountability, it's nobody's responsibility, and that's often where a lot of charitable organisations, a lot of media people can get into sticky positions quite quickly because they're in no man's land.
Yes, and we did as well. Although it's very, it's only basically a tiny little road bridge and then a big car park, and it's already under control because of the war, but it's patrolled by Ukrainians with automatic weapons all the time. So it's not like it's a Wild West.
I think we've been desensitized a little bit these days to seeing so many armed individuals. I mean, since we had the attacks in the UK and stuff like that, there's a lot more armed police, and I personally support that. I love to see skilled operators with the ability to make the right decisions, hopefully. But when you go somewhere like that, was there any surrealness about seeing such a heavy presence of military force, or even just like new military force, where males have been empowered with assault rifles effectively?
Not really, because me being having Polish background, I remember before Poland used to be in the European Union that every border looked like that. I think we are now too cocooned in maybe now not with the Brexit, but that borders don't exist.
Yeah, we are still pretty cocooned. I know not theoretically, yes, borders now exist and are more defined. But we still there's still got a real elitist approach to the globe. Being in the UK, we think everybody wants to see us. We can go anywhere we like. There's no limitations on us, and that's quite an elitist view of the world, really.
And when I was a child, the border was the border. There was scary men with big guns, and you're not supposed to say jokes, smile, or anything, because they can mess you up very quickly, and not in physical way, but in a way that you'll need to sit there for maybe another 10 hours if you're being too cheeky. Yeah. So I've got good memories of those type of borders, so at least going to those countries for me is quite natural.
Take us down that road for a minute, because I know you live in Scotland now, but just give us that whistle stop tour of how you found yourself to be part of the fire service in Scotland and where you came from, really.
So I came back then to England as a naive 19-year-old about 17 years ago, and it was just a summer holiday. It was supposed to be me and the then girlfriend, now wife, two silly kids to fly over and see how life is in a different country. And it kind of backfired. We seen it as a bit of an adventure. We started living in somebody's room, sleeping on the floor for a couple of months.
Yeah.
And thinking, oh, this is not too bad, and then it kind of at that time we already had a 1-year-old daughter, but she stayed with my wife's mum, at least for the first 3 months she did. And then when we
is a surreal situation for people in the UK. I know that family and culture. We had another friend. I think his episode came out today. Actually, a Polish gentleman. And he tells me of how community is so much stronger in those places, and that your parents, you live with your parents sometimes, and they look after their family a lot more. So it's not as strange to leave a young child with a close relative. Now, over here, is like your kids are your kids, and they're your problem. And I think people in the UK would probably never think about doing that.
Yeah, no, that was never a problem. It was more of a, now we've got another child, 15 years different between children. And now we've got another child, and we were worried about going to the restaurant. What about if we run out of napkins?
Crazy how you've been conditioned now. You got soft.
Now,
you got soft, brother.
But it's. I think we've grown up. Back then, because we were kids, we thought, the world's our oyster. We'll go and do whatever we want.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to stop us. And as stupid as it was, it worked.
Do you think it's stupid, though? I mean, you say naive. I still think I'm a naive 32-year-old.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because I still have the optimism. And yeah, there's a lot of nasty, horrible things that happen in the world. But we can, and people will say that our children are more at threat now than they ever have been. And I appreciate they are, maybe from the fact that they interact with the online world so much is perhaps where the biggest threat comes from. But I feel like my kids are pretty safe. I give my daughter a lot of freedom. She walks to and from school and stuff like that. And yes, there's always the opportunity, but I try and empower her with the right sort of mindset and I'm not a perfect parent by any stretch of the imagination. But do you think kids are as safe these days as they used to? I know we're getting off topic here. We'll get back, but
I think so. And maybe because of my upbringing, we were always outside and all that, and we were always kind of independent to a certain degree. So I, with my older daughter, who's now going to be 18 next month, we were very happy for her to very early on have her own key to the house, to go walk back and from school on her own. Yeah. And we actually, and maybe now I can say it because so many years has passed, we are actually worried that what will the neighbors say if they see that? We were perfectly happy with our child to do it, and we trusted her that she'd be perfectly fine because we know her. But we were worried, what if the neighbors would see her coming back home on her own, and we were a bit worried about that.
Yeah.
But we had no doubt in our mind that she's totally capable of it.
So
but,
what made you want to stay and be part of the UK and then eventually work your way into the fire service?
Oh, it was a funny thing because it was, as I said, it was a bit of an adventure, It was silly, naive adventure because, we were two young people with certainly hardly any money, with basic English and thought we're gonna make a living for ourselves. We were two young people, let's say, in love, who thought we don't need adults to tell us what to do. We'll just provide for ourselves. And that's what we kind of had a go at. And
do you know what though? I would rather have that mindset, and I would rather we still have more people with that mindset. I think now what we've got is only half of it sometimes, which is I don't care about adults telling me what to do. But then we don't get the last bit, which is I'm just going to go off and earn for myself. I'm going to go off and make a living for myself. It's like saying I don't want adults to tell me what to do, but I want them to pay for me. And I'm like, no. You can't have half the deal. You got to have the whole deal. It's not. You can't. It's not pick and mix. You can't pick and choose.
So so it was very very quick period of growing up for me. From living with my parents. Never, to this day, I have never been an adult in Poland. I've left when I was 19, let's say. Always still at school. Always with my parents. Never paid a bill in my life in Poland, or bought a car or whatever, driven a car. And here I was trying to find job in a country that I've never heard of, and I just barely speak a language.
God, it's just surreal.
But it was exciting, and after 3 months, we felt that it was going so well that we brought our daughter over.
Oh, wow.
And
a 1-year-old, and you guys are 19 and 18 and 20 or whatever you were then. Wow.
Yeah, but we started little jobs here and there. I was working night shifts. The wife was working during the day, so we were swapping to look after the child.
Passing ships in the morning.
And it was ridiculous, but at the time we thought that's what's necessary to make a living.
Is it ridiculous though? I like it. I love it, mate. I'm romantic. I like that. God, your back's up against the wall. Let's make it happen. Come on. Now, what sort of life? How are you living? How do you want to live? What are you going to do about it? We live in such an affluent society. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to go out there? Man, I cannot even begin to imagine what it must have been like for for somebody like yourself and your wife, having people wagging their finger in your face and saying, "Oh, you stupid foreigner," or "He doesn't understand it. He doesn't understand the language. He doesn't know those words," and then being held back from so many positions just because you don't quite get the dialect, or you're smart, you're smart, skilled, dedicated, probably working twice as hard as everybody else, whilst getting shit thrown in your face, if you excuse my language. You know what I mean? Whilst getting people pointing the finger, laughing at you, and not giving you an opportunity. That must have just. I admire you for that. I admire anybody for that. I've got a number of friends that emigrated to this country, and it makes me feel like a coward. I'm like, really? I'm worried about these, prissy little problems that I've got. Jesus, the stuff you've been through and the stuff that people in Ukraine are going through now, it annoys me.
I think, Pete, now these days, I'm thinking of it in a similar way you do. It's something to admire and all that. But at the time, I didn't see myself as some kind of victim or some kind of, I voluntarily took that on. If somebody's not nice to me, that's fine. Poland at the time, at least, was not exactly a welcoming country to foreigners.
Yeah.
So I understood why people might not be very keen on us being here.
Yeah.
It wasn't nice, it wasn't pleasant, but I can explain it to myself.
Well, you know what? And I've found this because obviously I spent a lot of time in gyms and stuff like that. And over 20 years, I found that the women from Poland tend to be incredibly beautiful for some reason. And the dudes are just scary. There's a lot of scary Polish dudes. They all seem to be jacked. They all seem to be strong, hardworking. Like you could hammer a nail in with their head. Do you know what I mean? These dudes, there's no messing about with these dudes.
But you know me, I'm not like that.
I know you're not like that, but you have the work ethic of that very same person. Do you know what I mean? They've just applied it in a physical capacity. But again, we talk about your work in the emergency services. You are that relentless dude. You are the not workaholic, but you still apply that same level of discipline. No, you'll say that you won't, but you do.
I try to. But I think it's all down to upbringing. Because we or my generation in Poland, where the upbringing was still during the communism. Yeah. And there was hardly anything, everybody was struggling. And I think that's the kind of that grit and determination, because if you don't have it easy, you have to look after yourself.
Yeah.
And that's where it stems from, But then, I got in one of the factories that I worked with there was a nice South African man, and he told me about retained fire brigade or fire service. That was back in Lincolnshire. And I thought, that sounds brilliant. I never considered being a firefighter. But I thought that sounds all right. And I went to my local station to ask about it. They were quite welcoming, let's say, for the lack of a better word. And and I became a retained firefighter, a few months later.
What was your first experiences of it when you first went to the fire station? Was it a drill night where they, the old standard retained drill night, throwing ladders up and doing some pumping, same as all over the UK, or what did it look like?
It was a drill night. Obviously, initially, I had a piercing in my bottom lip, so they mocked that a little bit.
I bloody hope they did.
I had a long hair as well, so that had to go. Or it didn't have to go, but I felt like it should. And to be fair with you, I expected, because my only vision of fire service was what it is like, or what it used to be like in Poland. I expected it to be a lot more militaristic and a lot tougher. But suddenly everybody was quite nice and welcoming. It was a bit of a shock. And then they've done the RPC drill where they used me as a casualty in the car. That was okay.
Did they leave you strapped to the longboard outside? Because I'm not saying that we did or didn't used to do that, but I know it's something that gets done.
No, I heard of instances of that happening, but no, they were all very nice. And maybe because I was a foreigner, they were a bit worried to go too far. Fast forward, I thought this would be a great career, as a whole time. And I've started inquiring if I could be a whole-time firefighter, because, for example, in Poland, you need to be a Polish citizen to be a firefighter.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. So I've kind of done a little bit of research. Back then, the internet I could afford was going to the library. I definitely went to Hampshire. I went to Manchester. I went to Derbyshire. I went to South Yorkshire. A few more. Nottinghamshire, definitely. So it was quite a few, and at different times I got to different stages in different counties.
Yeah.
So, and then eventually I've succeeded in what used to be Lothian Borders, i.e. Edinburgh and the areas around it. I maybe shouldn't be saying this, but at the time when I got in Edinburgh, I still had an interview to go in South Yorkshire.
Oh mate, I'm the same. Honestly, so I got a promotion last week, and I also awaiting a interview outcome from a different brigade, and I'm still considering both of them. And mate, that's not, you never want to waste anybody's time, but there's lots of opportunities. There's lots of different things that you can do out there, and you're never trying to waste anybody's time. Very respectful of everybody's time, but you've got to be an individual. You've got to do what's best for you and your family at the end of the day.
Yeah, but at the same time, I've kind of accepted the Edinburgh offer, but I never got in touch with South Yorkshire. That I'm not gonna pursue it.
Yeah.
And I totally forgot about it. And then I remember waking up one morning, my phone ringing, and some obviously kind gentleman introducing himself and saying he's phoning from South Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service, and they are awaiting me at interview. And so from this place, I should apologize for wasting their time. And I remember I gave some excuse about childcare or something, but
you let that one go too far. You dropped the ball on that one.
Yeah, I shouldn't have. But at the time, I was kind of caught off guard. And I do apologize. For whoever was doing it at South Yorkshire.
They're probably retired now. Don't worry about it. So take us back. And speaking about when your upbringing in Poland, I suppose when you've been to Moldova and perhaps when you've been to now to Ukraine and stuff like that, I wonder if for you, and that's why, at the beginning of our conversation, you didn't disregard it, but it was one of those, because that's probably a bit more of a familiar environment for you than it would be for somebody like me.
Definitely. And especially in Ukrainian language, apart from the alphabet, which is like Russian alphabet, the letters are different, in speaking form is very similar to Polish language.
Okay.
So I can, as much as I don't understand much of Russian, I can definitely understand quite a bit of Ukrainian. So that helps. Moldovan, not so much, because they kind of talk Romanian version or Romanian language or version of Romanian language. But at the same time, every firefighter that I've trained there spoke Russian as well. So again, with my very limited Russian skill, I could have at least had a little bit more chat, or not chat maybe, but some kind of
build rapport with people. Yeah, you're able to at least get a bit more of a connection with them. You can, even if you just share 3 or 4 words, it goes a long way.
Exactly. And they then enjoyed working with me a lot more than with somebody, let's say somebody else who had to use a translator or interpreter all the time.
Yeah.
So for me, going to those places, let's not say it's like coming back home, because the fire service in Poland is these days, I personally think it's surpassing the UK fire service in many ways.
Wow.
But the fire services over there are still in those basic structures, and they are very militaristic as well. Some parts, like the whole time guys in Moldova, are part of military as well.
And there's a real superpower to that as well. And also, I'm not talking superpowers in a global sense. What I mean is, we've got away from a lot of the stuff that worried us about, being considered to be too militaristic and being a bit too rigid in the way that we do things. But it does give you an incredible amount of expected discipline and personal accountability when you're holding people to a higher standard like that. I know we've spoken privately before about this thought process that we feel like we're falling asleep at the wheel, and it's part of the whole point of the podcast and some of the people you've introduced us to, because trying to slowly turn up the temperature in the room and trying to turn up the passion and the drive and the personal accountability. Just speak to that if you can, about that whole sort of falling asleep at the wheel aspect, and how we've got to be really careful that we aren't allowing ourselves to lower our standards, really.
It's very difficult to talk about, because over the last few years, when I've properly became involved or passionate about my job, before I was a firefighter, but I was I was going with the flow, let's say. As for last maybe 4 or 5 years, I've decided to kind of have a good hard look at myself and actually be a firefighter I'd want myself to be, and I'd want to turn up to my house if there's a fire. And I have definitely, noticed it. Look, whether even looking at other fire services, that are very, like the guys in Paris Fire Brigade, for example, are just something else. They are like from another planet.
Yeah.
It seems like we're not doing the same job. But even within our UK fire service, I'm welcoming the wider approach to recruitment. I think that fire service should be a place where everybody is welcome and everybody can have a go and try their strengths and weaknesses.
I think everybody should be given the opportunity to try and meet the standard.
Definitely.
I'm being very particular about my words there, because I would invite everybody to challenge themselves to raise up to that required standard. What I don't want to do is make our desire for inclusion become a greater desire than our desire to be professionals and to have and encourage excellence in the sector. It shouldn't come at the sacrifice of our ability to do what we're supposed to be doing, which is serve the communities in the best possible manner.
Definitely, and I think somebody, I can't remember, maybe John McDonough, who you spoke with on your podcast before as well, said something that or maybe I'm misquoting him now, but it's that we shouldn't allow ourselves to stop actually doing our job or stop what the public or the communities expect us to do. I know that we need to try to eliminate the risk factor of our job, but unfortunately, that's the job we have all chosen.
Yes.
And the risk factor will be there. We should obviously work as hard as we can to eliminate unnecessary risk. But
not to the point.
time,
but we should then still expose ourselves to risk in a controlled way, which is what training is. When we get to incidents, try and avoid as much risk as is possible, whilst balancing our ability to be practitioners, to be able to safely get to work in a highly risk environment.
Totally, and I think it's something to do with maybe risk literacy. That if you are an expert at something, the risk is not, you understand what risk you are taking, and that you are trained to deal with that risk. I'm sure John McDonough says a little analogy that if there is a cliff and it's 10 feet apart, you can probably just jump it.
Yeah.
But again, if it gets bigger and bigger, somebody who's well trained and let's say long jumper, he'll say that's not a problem for me.
Yeah.
But somebody who's not trained, that will be a massive risk for them.
It's like when you see levels of gymnastics or anything like that, with somebody that's got that level of discipline, core strength, flexibility, because they've worked on it for years and years and years. That is not a dangerous thing for them to attempt. Even the simplicity of fitness is a lovely simple. And if I'm going to do a squat or whatever, if it gets too heavy, I know how to get out of it safely and not hurt myself.
Yeah.
I know how to dump the bar safely and get out of there. If somebody doesn't know how to do that, they're going to get stuck under it. They're going to get crushed. They're going to hurt their spine. They're going to damage their knees. Not because it was too risky for them to be there, because they weren't trained. They weren't familiar with the risks. They didn't know how to get out safely and quickly. Those analogies are things that, like you say, there's the calculation there about if you increase the skill set and if you increase the competency of somebody, you inherently reduce the risk. Because they're more skilled and competent to deal with the risk. They do it and also we talk about frequency, constant exposure if you can do, so that it's constant micro exposure to those risks so that you build up a tolerance to it as well. Not a dangerous tolerance, but like he said, if there's a compartment fire or if there's a structure fire, I'm going to send people in. I don't care if there's anybody in there or if they're not in there. As long as the building doesn't look like it's about to collapse, I want them to run the drill. I want them to go through the methods. I want them to get in there. I want them to do, control fire behavior, compartment behavior. I want them to run that drill. I want them to see it. I want them to see how it reacts to their maneuvers and their behaviors and the way that they use cooling and stuff like that. They should run that.
Yeah, so because then when it actually happens that there is somebody in there, they're not doing it for the first time. Absolutely. They know exactly what to expect, and that's something. What another thing I will mention, Pete, that I feel quite strong or quite passionately about is that the training we do, including especially foundation training, we have widened our search for people. Back 20, 30 years ago, people in the fire service were mostly maybe army or tradespeople.
Yeah.
Now we've widened that net, and quite rightly so. But unfortunately, I feel like our way of training has not adapted to that. We still train as per 1970s training manuals, but we've got people coming into the job that have, for example, never held a hammer in their hand in their life.
Absolutely correct, mate. Absolutely correct. We're building on an assumed foundation. Like you say, we're assuming that character building and that conditioning from their environment has already happened. When you and I were kids, we were messing about with our car, or we were trying to change spark plugs, or we were doing all of this stuff. We were getting out there and getting a penknife and setting fire to stuff in the woods, and then learning how to put it out, and then trying to build a rope swing and all of this that we're doing Cub Scouts and all that sort of stuff. All of that conditioning, we can't assume that now. The foundation is not the same as it was, and we have got to step up. And we've had this conversation before because we're not moaning now, but we've had conversations privately where we've been like, "Oh man, this and that and that," and we've been calling each other out on that BS, which is, well, we are part of the solution. We have got to be the solution. You don't get to pick your problems. It doesn't matter whose fault it is.
Definitely.
Whose responsibility is it to fix it? It's our responsibility. We are here right now. If it was crap 10 years ago, somebody else's fault. If it's not good now, it's your fault. It's my fault. Yeah, we have got to build the foundation again. We can't just assume, because like you say, we're not getting those people delivered into the services anymore, and that comes with its benefits. But like you say, we've got to adapt for it.
Because I am a great believer in the view that we need to recruit people for their attitude, not necessarily their abilities. If somebody's passionate about the job, we can teach them everything that the job entails. That's all that should be required. If they've got the right mindset for this job and the right mindset for learning and self-development, they will learn all the practical skills.
If you've got the mindset, I can teach you the skill set. That's what it's all about. I see so many people now, and it sounds horrible, but they grind me because they've got the skill set, but they haven't got the mindset anymore. They're not interested.
Definitely, and I think, unfortunately,
get rid of them.
That was the case for many, many years. That you fitted that kind of prescribed something what we're looking for, and you fit it, then come in.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you actually think about the job or how you're going to carry yourself through the 30 years of career. But that's a long conversation.
I love going down rabbit holes with you, brother. Take us back to Ukraine. So you've got there, you've managed to get across the border, remember correctly, and then you managed to deliver the vehicles. Everything's getting unpacked, everything's getting unbundled. What was the reception like when you got there?
Oh, and I'll tell you what the little story that happened when we are unpacking. The Ukrainian fire service guys came up, met us, all brilliant. They helped, because obviously the 4 fire engines, they were taking them, but the lorry had to be repacked into their lorry because the lorry was coming back with us.
Oh yeah.
So that was a very, very quick operation of all hands on deck,
just
and
a chain gang. Just go, just get
it. Basically. And there I'm getting the phone call from our Hungarian fixer, and he says, "Oh, so how is it going? Where are you guys?" And I'm saying, "Oh, we're in this no man's land bit here, between the borders, just unpacking stuff." And he's like, "You where?" And I'm like, "Oh, what's wrong? We're." And he says, "Why did you go in there?" And I'm like, "Oh, we didn't know that we were supposed to. If that is the only way for us to give the equipment, then that's what we have to do. We not came all this way to then not do it." And what transpired is, and to be fair, I should have maybe noticed something, but it never struck me. When we turned up to the border, I was expecting to see thousands of refugees, and there weren't any. There were buses with like women and children going through, and they were stopping there and all that, but not like queues of people. And I thought, that's a bit strange, but night. I thought maybe it quieted down because it was Sunday. I thought maybe they don't come through on Sundays.
It's day off, isn't it? They're desperate, not that desperate. But anyway, no,
Yeah. Obviously, we're joking here, but what transpired was that this border crossing does not serve pedestrians, and the problem now we had is that the trucks are being left in Ukraine, and we need to walk back into Hungary, and this suddenly is a problem.
Yeah,
because we can't. So then it was a tragedy. Our fixer boy was losing his head. What have we done and all that? He says that the next pedestrian border crossing, is about 30 kilometers away. And because the refugees are there is about 3-day wait to go back into Hungary.
Jesus. But surely they could see you. Surely the border, you're like you say, you've not gone too far. They're like, oh, hey guys, you saw us 6 hours ago. It's like when you go out the wrong door of a restaurant or a club and you're like, dude, I'm just going to pop to my car. This is me. I'm going to be back in 5 minutes. You let me back through? And he goes, yeah, sure, no problem. Surely, I know I'm trying to make it simplistic there. Yeah. Is that not how it works? Once you're through, you're not coming back.
It kind of is and it isn't. Apparently, the borders now are very, very secure because of there is a lot of smuggling going on as a background to the war. So they're trying to be extra vigilant.
Yeah.
Also,
and to be fair, if there's 6 big vehicles going through like that, it's a fantastic opportunity for somebody to smuggle something.
Definitely.
It'd be a very cheap way to do it. We talk about Trojan horses and stuff like that. That's exactly what you're looking at there.
And people, yes, exactly. And people were telling me, oh, why did they not just wave you through? It's after all, it's stuff for them to help them. But it's not that easy. It's not that simple.
People don't know that. If you say I've got a big empty tank in the middle of my fire engine, there'll be a lot of people that might want to benefit from that big empty tank in the middle of your fire engine.
Definitely. And then another thing is that because of this ban for males leaving Ukraine, there is very scrupulous checks on the borders to check if the people that are leaving Ukraine or entering Hungary, for that matter, are not doing it on false papers. They are not Ukrainians with false papers trying to leave the country.
Isn't that a strange thing as well? It's not strange, but I try and liken it to things that happen in the UK, and I've had these conversations with a few people where I'm like, if this happened over here, I feel like we've got lost in the woods so much that if there was a big call to arms in the UK, how many people would pick up a rifle? How many people, or not even pick up a rifle? How many people would make sandbags? Or how many people would go and harvest food out of the fields, or make uniforms or whatever? I think I don't know. I hope I'm wrong, but I worry that there would be a lot of people going, it's not my problem. I'm like, what are you on about? I think a lot of people in the emergency services, we kind of do it anyway. We don't get paid a lot of money by comparison of working in the private sector, so we would all opt in anyway. But if they said nobody can leave if you're between these ages, man, we'd have a domestic war. Never, let alone other people trying to cause us some problems. It's amazing that I'm in awe of the people that are doing it, but it must be petrifying.
I do think that sometimes to myself, and share your opinion. Although I know that people under crisis, maybe they would kind of get together a little bit.
If somebody backed you up at a war, you'd be surprised what you'll do.
The difference is that in this country, obviously, people were not subjected to any kind of, and I don't mean it lightly, hardship. That Ukraine only became a country in, 91 or 96, was it?
Yeah.
An independent state. Obviously, historically, Ukraine has been a country for hundreds of years, but
very much like what happened in Kosovo, though. Kosovo is probably a more recent example. 10 or 15 years ago, wasn't it? That they, maybe slightly longer. Sorry.
Definitely.
And they became, a lot of people still don't recognize them, and they have had to grind that. It was not given to them. That has come from blood, sacrifice, walking hundreds of miles. No food. Terrible acts that have happened to their children and their women and stuff like that. They have earned it.
So, and I think that the population still remembers those hard days. The people living there, everybody who's over 30 have lived during communism and the troubles. People still got probably guns squirreled away in their houses, so it's maybe a little bit different than our situation here. I think we've been comfortable for maybe too long. For
We're
any
about 2 or 3 generations later, maybe two generations later than people who had to face true adversity, and it gets filtered and dissipated as it goes through each generation. So now we're so very detached from what that really is like.
Definitely
surreal. So how did you get back? How did you get back? You're not still there now, right? I'm not speaking to you in Ukraine, brother.
No, we got back.
You're speaking to me from a cave in the back of somebody's house, hiding under the floorboards or something.
No, I'm safely back in Scotland, but there was a lot of discussion and a lot of because it's a typical thing on the border. The one side tells it's fine, just do it this way, you'll be totally fine. And then you get to the other guys, and they tell you, what? That's never going to happen, and it's kind of that. But I'm not going to tell you how we got back in, because it wasn't. But it was challenging, and all the credit to the brilliant fixer Patrick we had in Hungary, because he's made a lot of phone calls to top brass in Hungarian border guards and all that to get us out. So all the credit to him.
So what's it like being back? You had to transition straight into normal life. You've been exposed to, the reality of some of the stuff that's going on in the world, and you've come back to somebody moaning that they can't get leave on Saturday night, or the Wi-Fi is not working, or someone's refusing to make lunch for the watch.
It's surreal, Pete. It's surreal. It's not even that, because I've had those feelings the way you described them after previous trips, because although previously there was never a war, but it was still, let's say, a destitution or quite a poor countries.
Yeah.
But this time, I actually, when we drive there, it obviously takes a few days of drive. In this case, was 4 days of non-stop driving. So you kind of feel like you're getting far away from home. But then way back, it's just a flight over, and within 2-3 hours you're back. And when my wife picked me up from the airport, I actually felt quite emotional, not in a way that I can't describe it. It was just, I felt definitely part of it was like guilty that now I'm sitting in my nice comfortable car, going wherever I want. I can stop at any point, buy anything I want. And these people are left there, who I have just spoken with, a few hours ago, are still left in that horrible, horrible situation from which we wouldn't know what to do.
It's so surreal as well, because it's not like you've. I say no, you do anything special. You've not done anything special to get back. You've just utilize transport that should be available to everybody.
Yes.
You've literally the privileges, the unknown privileges, where you suddenly arrive back and your missus is like, missed you lots, what, I'll make you a specialty, what do you want? Let's go and see the kids. And you're like, I've just...
Oh, that never happened.
Okay. Okay, let's just pretend. She's like, I've left the washing for you. You've been gone for days. Yeah, there's stuff that needs fixing around the house. Right? You've had your holiday.
It was like that. It was, but anyway, it's the privilege that we don't think of, let's say, having a Western passport. Now me having a British passport and Polish passport, which then gives me access to EU as well. At least I'm not subject to Brexit. I don't think we appreciate that. That passport lets me leave the country that is at war, and other people are not allowed to do that, just purely because the accident of birth came to this world a different bit of land.
That is where I think it's such. I love that. I love you saying that. Sorry to interrupt. It's just such, like you say, people didn't earn a lot of this stuff. You were just born in the right place, or not the right place, but it was just a lottery. All right, don't talk to me about privilege and you've earned this, and you should make the most of where you are, And I believe we should all be patriotic
Definitely.
and we should support our communities, and I'm sure that's probably obvious to people in what we do. But you are here by chance. You did win the lottery. You may feel like life sucks, and I apologize for anybody that's going through challenges that feel like they're outside of their control. But you are very lucky if you're listening. If you're listening to this, you probably live in the Western world, and you've probably got a lot of privileges you don't realize.
Definitely, and it's maybe in Britain is a bit different because we're an island, but on mainland Europe, it's just a matter of that imaginary line in the sand between one country and the other. And these lines have changed over the years hundreds of times.
Yeah.
And suddenly people on one side of that line who were maybe neighbors are totally against each other, or one of them have quite a lot of privileges and the others are living in destitution. It just boggles my mind.
Do you ever experience anything like that still? Because there are still pockets of unknown or subconscious sort of prejudices and bigotry and all this sort of silliness that we still have, even within the UK, people that are just ignorant and uneducated. You still have a noticeable accent, as I'm sure people will have noted.
Yes.
Do you ever have that? Do you ever? I mean, you said I'd totally forgotten. To be fair, I know we've had lots of conversations before, but when you said I came over when I was 19, I'd completely forgotten that you'd come from somewhere else. To be honest, I know you as Mike from Scotland. I don't think of you as Mike from Poland. It's weird, but you must still get that sometimes.
Yeah.
I know one of your children was obviously born in the UK, and but your partner came over with you as well.
Yes, I'll tell you one story that is with me till this day, and it wasn't even too nasty at the time. I never felt, but it's a fire brigade story, and I'm not, obviously for that reason I'm not going to name any names. But I remember soon after I joined the fire service in Edinburgh, one of the first fires we had with a station, because my station is a multi-pump station. We've got 2 pumps, ladder and special, and so we deal with majority of our fires by ourselves. But on this occasion, it was one of the maybe slightly bigger fires, and we went over to the neighboring station area. And I remember being there. The other station pump was sitting there, and I didn't know what to do. I was quite fresh after my foundation course, so I just stood next to the guy from my pump and was waiting for basically him to maybe tell me to do something because I was lost. And there comes a guy from that neighboring station to us, and the guy from my station says to him, "Oh, look, this is our new probie." And I'm already sweating, thinking, "Oh, what he's going to say." And he looked me up and down and says, "Is he gay?" And because that was, I joined the fire brigade the time where there was a lot of positive action days, and all that. So the old hand, they always thought that anybody joining the fire brigade these days is gay.
So fucking what if you are? Who gives a shit?
But yeah, obviously, but that wasn't the worst of it.
Excuse my language. Sorry.
So he kind of looked me up and down, says to the, not even to me, but to the other guy from my station, says, "Oh, is he gay?" And the boy from my station replies to him, "No, it's worse. He's Polish." At the time, I thought, "Oh, at least they're not being fucking, aggressive to me or whatever." But now looking back at it, I feel like a piece of shit,
Yeah.
And probably I'll never forget that. But that's what the reality of it was, and I'm sure a lot has changed in that time.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, experiences like that are with you to stay. And unfortunately,
I feel triggered sometimes when I see. I still see it with. We're lucky enough to have a lot of ladies that have joined my particular fire station. It makes for a great environment for various reasons, but it is behave yourself. But no, you know what? They're so gregarious, so interested. These are opportunities that they've never had before, and everything is so new to them because they've been conditioned not to, they maybe haven't got, tools out working on their cars when they were kids and stuff like that. So we're able to get into so many of the basics, and they find it so interesting. And I find it interesting because I'm interested in anybody that finds it interesting. But I always feel so triggered. And I think if I'm really giving myself a bit of self-awareness, I probably get over-triggered because I was bullied as a kid, really bullied as a kid. And that kind of what led me to doing loads of weightlifting and muscle building and all that craziness and that minefield that went down. So when I see anything like that, it's almost like I have an allergy to it. It's like a peanut allergy.
Yeah.
And when I feel it, I'm triggered. And I'm sure I probably snap some people's heads off sometimes. But I suppose we all justify our own behaviors for various reasons. And I feel like for any time that I may accidentally offend somebody who I believe is harassing or bullying somebody else, I feel justified of the slight bit of discomfort they might feel because of the potential unheard, silenced, harassment and discomfort, and eventually leaving the service that will have happened so many times before. And I'm not the bloody savior of the fire service, for God's sake. It'll be a long time after, but I get so triggered when I hear that, and I'm always on the front foot with it. But I appreciate it does. Yeah. It does cause a barrier sometimes.
But on balance, since I came to Scotland, it's been people have been so nice. I think Scotland have a lot of ties with Poland. In Second World War, there was a lot of Polish troops stationed here. So a lot of, especially older people, still have a lot of good memories of Polish troops and Poland in general. So honestly, since I have arrived here in Scotland, I can only say good things about it. And then yes, there maybe were singular incidents, but that's not representative of how people are here at all.
No. I love having anybody that's come from a different country or from an underrepresented group, because usually, and I don't even care what country they've come from or what thing they're part of. But again, we talk about that mindset, skill set. They've usually got a bit of a fuck you mindset where they're like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to learn this, because I know you don't want me to learn it, and you're waiting for me to get this wrong so you can point the finger and go, see, I told you didn't know how to do it. So that gives them that, I'm going to do this, and I'm used to people shaking their finger in my face, so that's not going to deter me, because they've already gone through so many barriers to be standing in the start line. Do you know what I mean? Some people are born on the start line. Yeah. They're not born on the start line. They have had to travel and get through and learn the language and learn the skill set, learn how to live in this country. They have got a much deeper grit than so many other people. So I would rather have them, because when stuff does get difficult, which inevitably is going to at some point in time,
of course,
they will be there. They are not going to turn tail and run. They're going to lean in. They're going to step forward. They're going to say, what else do you need me to do? What can I do? What do you need me to do next? Have we thought about this? Have we thought about that? You know what? I've got that covered. That's the person I want. That's the person I want next to me.
What I enjoy about it as well is that different upbringing of different people from different cultures gives us different perspective on certain problems and issues. And then these people, because of their outlook on life, can have contribution towards the problems we are having right now.
Absolutely.
Completely different that I could never, foresee or think of. So I definitely appreciate somebody who had totally different upbringing and totally different culture to come and contribute, because I cannot, I don't know everything, and there's plenty I don't know. And so having extra pair of eyes, and especially another pair of eyes looking from not the same angle as I am looking, it's great. It's great.
Yeah. What I do want to ask you about as well, and before we sort of wrap it up, because you are the sort of person that has already gone out, and you said there's lots of things you don't know. What I do know about you is you're the sort of person that's going out and finding these resources. So give people the benefit of just some of the many conversations we've had about people that are coming into the services. What are the things they should be looking for? What are the great resources that may or may not have been available to them in their services, but places where you have personally got a lot of value from? I know you know the right websites, you know the right seminars. Just give us off the top of your head a few places, because again, when you compare us to Paris-based prison firefighters and some of the Polish fire services, they are continuing down that road of personal development that sometimes we've taken the foot off the gas a little bit. So where are some places, because I know we're trying to share as many of them as we can on the podcast, but I'll be honest with people, you're where a lot of these come from. So give them the privilege from your own words.
I'd say, I got into it by started reading. Actually there is a brilliant instructor, Polish instructor. His name is Szymon Kokot, and he got me kind of involved. He showed me that it's possible to know more than what the service is teaching you. Obviously, all the stuff that you're being taught at your service is brilliant stuff, but that's not all of it. That's probably a tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more to it, to our craft, because just look at the even different countries fighting fires differently. It's everybody fights fires and they all go out. So it's not like we're doing something wrong and they doing something right. Getting all that knowledge from different places and using it to your benefit or to benefit of your organization. You know, the silly example is putting BA face mask on top of the flash hood and not underneath it. You know, it's in the UK, it would blow our mind if somebody done that. And we'd call them probably an idiot or that they're not educated properly. But then firefighters in Scandinavia or Dutch firefight Belgians, you know, will do it all the time without, you know, having second thought. So, you know, they're not stupid. They're not going out there to kill themselves. It clearly works. So there is no need to you know, get on your high horse and criticize something before you learn why that is taking place. And that's what I've learned for years, that, you know, the discussions on social media or whatever, I try to stay out of it because I don't think I'm educated enough. And instead of wasting time on that, I will go and educate myself. So I think the first book I got my hands on was Paul Grimwood's Euro Firefighter. And it just blew my mind that this stuff is from the guy who, you know, some people will call him the godfather of UK fire service.
He's on our hit list. He's coming. He's coming. He
is. I'll make sure he is.
I know.
He presents all the research, the data, the experience, the vast experience he had on both sides of the Atlantic in such a way, easy for the, let's say, ordinary firefighter to understand. And then you start thinking to yourself, why don't we do that? And obviously there is an array of reasons, but and then it snowballed from there. You start learning about people like John McDonough and John Chubb in Dublin Fire Brigade. He's another great man.
That's great. I love them.
And through those people, I have heard of the IFIW, the International Fire Instructors Workshop. I started Googling it, started watching YouTube videos from lectures from previous editions. Then I took part in last year's editions and 2019, 2020. And I can't wait for another one. I've got a fire behavior workshop to go to in the beginning of June. There is the HAIX conference in May in London.
Is that still on in London? Because I know you sent me a link to that. Is that? I'm not sure if that's still happening. Is that on?
Yes. It's definitely happening.
All right, I'm going to try and get on that.
I'm still not sure if I'll be able to get there, but I'm doing my best to try. And then there are plenty of online content. I don't know if you will be aware of the UL Firefighter Safety Research Institute.
Yeah.
And if you just look up online UL FSRI, there is plenty of content like e-learning lessons based on real life size experiments, and they are just invaluable. Amount of details and data gathered from these experiments is just mind blowing. And the experts, there's always a panel of experts chosen from around the world to oversee each experiment. Again, and then they provide like a quick bite-sized chunks of science for you to use at your leisure, you know, at your department or at your fire service.
And a lot of the time as well, a lot of the actionables and a lot of the results that come out of those things will not always, but will inevitably shape the operational guidance that you will probably end up seeing in about 5 years' time anyway. But those studies are happening now, you know, and then they need to go through the iterative learning process and the feedback process, and how does it dovetail with our current procedures, and what are we going to adapt, and what equipment requirements is it going to be. But you can stay ahead of the curve, and like you just said, you know, at least demonstrate an awareness and an interest in what is happening now, because then you can stay ahead of it. And then when these things appear to come as like a side swipe curveball, and they're like, why are we changing that? Where's that come from? Well, dude, that study was like 4 years ago. Yeah, now it's just finding its way into the service. But this is not new.
It's so much easier for me to present it to my watch, to my colleagues, that something is changing or something. Let's pick an example of smoke curtains. The first time it was presented to my station, it was like, oh, what's this? It's a bit of fire blanket hanging in the door. How much does this cost? And all this stuff. And then I can say, I have seen it at work. It's brilliant stuff. And probably 3/4 of European countries are using them.
Yeah.
And now they make in their impact in America as well. And because of the people I have met, because of the events I have attended, when we got the smoke curtains, I have been in touch with Dr. Michael Reich, who was the inventor of the smoke curtain, and he provided me with plenty of pictures of case studies where the smoke curtain was used in real fires, of presentations, and then I can sell it to my crew in a much broader and quality way.
Yeah, rather the sell is so much better than the tell. If it's just a tell, it's like the service says we're using these now. Oh, really? Well, they don't want my opinion. I've been a firefighter for 30 years. Well, yeah, they do want your opinion, but you had the opportunity to give your opinion when the studies were going on. If you really were interested in being a consummate professional firefighter, then you would have been part of it anyway. You would have been that. I always think of you, Mike, like the wandering student. Do you know what I mean? You've got to be willing to venture out and see what gems you can pick up. You might have to troll through so much stuff. You might have to go through documents and YouTube videos and this and that. But then you'll find a nugget, and you come back from the wilderness with your nugget, and you share your nugget with the team, and you go, here's the nugget I found. And they go, that's really interesting. And like you say, when you've got that breadth of holistic knowledge, you're able to sell it rather than just say, I've got this piece of kit now, use it every time you go to a BA job or a high-rise job or, whatever. And people are like, it looks rubbish. How much was it? A waste of money all the time here. No, we're not. Go and look at the study.
And it's quite funny, because we've got in the UK, we've got our set ways of doing things, and they have been there, like our BA boards, our BA shuffles. They were there because of incidents, probably in the 60s or even earlier.
Yeah.
And we are so conditioned to it, because we were brought up with it, that we don't imagine not having it or doing something slightly different.
Yeah.
But I remember when I was training guys in Moldova, and because obviously when we train guys abroad, we train them to British standards, and I was telling them about how to move around in smoky room, about BA shuffle and all that, and they asked me, so are you telling us that it's hot up in the room and cool down here? And I was like, yeah, that's the theory. And he says, so why do you tell us to stand up and search, and why can't we just search down low? And I was like, that's a good point.
Because that's the way it's always been.
Yes, yeah.
And, sorry.
and then you see all the other nations, and especially Americans.
There's plenty of American firefighters. You see them shuffling through on their back knee. They'll proceed, one hand on the floor, shuffle through, and people are like, they still do it bloody quick. Yeah, and they can move quicker because they're not constantly exposed to that heat stress as well.
But somebody in the UK will tell me, because there could be needles on the floor, and I'm like, but in how many cases there were needles on the floor? Yeah. How many times did that happen? Anyway, we're digressing, but I'd like to discuss things with people who are interested in things. I don't like the cocky expressions that you see on social media. Oh, Americans got nothing to offer to us because all they do is go up on the roofs and they cut holes and fall through them, and stuff like that. It's just so ignorant that you don't want to sacrifice 5 minutes of your time to learn. Why do they do that? That's part of their strategy. And in certain circumstances, it's a very good strategy.
Absolutely.
It's not risk-free. But again, in the US, there are, I think, like 30,000 different fire departments, from top professionals like New York or Boston to very small rural departments. So we can't just say American firefighters are this or that.
And even across that range, there'll be many differences in the structural integrity of different buildings. There'll be lots of changes in the materials that are used in those structures. So there is going to be a variation of tactics, of strategies. There's going to be so many different. Doesn't mean they're making it up as they go along. You know, they're not stupid.
Definitely. And another problem in America is that these departments are sometimes limited to just a little town or something. You know, and so sometimes when I do a case study, I'll show a picture, and people will see that there are guys in 3 different types of PPE, you know, the fire kit. And I'm saying, look at this. You know, these are the guys from 3 different departments. So now they need to kind of work together, what they call mutual aid, and they all got different procedures and SOPs, and so obviously there is potential for things to go wrong. And we in Scotland, I think, are fortunate enough that now we've became one service quite a number of years ago now, and we all work, theoretically at least, in the same way. There are still differences between the regions, but I think they should be there because not all the regions are the same. People in you know, firefighters in Edinburgh are not going to fight fires the same way as firefighters, you know, in Inverness maybe, or on Scottish Islands up north. So we shouldn't kind of throw a baby with the bathwater and try to make everything exactly the same, but definitely have the basics that then we can branch off and adjust them to our local risks.
Well, look, man, you've always got a ready set of ears right here, and I know, and I just put it out there publicly, I very much appreciate your support and your involvement from a personal perspective in helping me expand my horizon, because even I operate in my own biases and my own unknown unknowns, where there's so many incredible things out there that it's great to have multiple sets of eyes on the horizon, seeing what pops up and what we can benefit from. So it's been incredible to have this opportunity to speak to you about the great work that Sarah's doing, the great work that, you know, you've been doing in Ukraine, and I know you're going to continue doing it. But what I sincerely hope more than anything is that you continue to be that, you know, wandering, traveling student, and no doubt people will continue to benefit from the things you have managed to, the nuggets you managed to bring back to us.
Oh, Pete, thanks for your kind words, but I'm only doing it because I think I want to be good at my job. You know, I'm not doing to impress anybody or to get promotion But
you don't hoard it either. You don't hoard the knowledge, which is a really distinct difference between some people that wander for it and some people that benefit from it because they want to share it with other people as well.
But at the same time, you know, I think I have benefited immensely from the podcast that you're doing, you know, and I was looking for something like that for years now, somewhere where UK firefighters especially can come together and share their knowledge, share their ideas. Because as we know, official fire brigades or different brigades documents and maybe even case studies are not exactly what we're looking for, although as beneficial as they are. Yeah. But we are trying to talk to each other because you know yourself, meeting people from different brigades, it's so beneficial.
Oh, gotcha.
Hearing how they deal with things, what kind of equipment they would use in that situation. It's just mind blowing. Yeah. And I love that. I love talking with people from slightly different areas, backgrounds, cultures than me, because suddenly they will come up with something that for them is totally obvious. And for me, it will be like that, you know, light bulb moment above my head.
Yeah. And that's my sincere desire, mate, for every single episode that we do. And I think you've struck probably more than most. You've probably ignited several light bulbs in me personally. I know I've got about 3/4 of a page of names and notes of people you've mentioned to me before. And this is like, there's a strange guilt that comes with speaking with you because like you give me some wonderful feedback. You're like, dude, really interesting. Just listen to that episode. Great. Have you considered speaking so-and-so? And I'm like, shit, no, sorry, Mike, I haven't. Damn. And then I add them to the list and I'm like, oh God, I'm not getting through the list. God, I want to speak to that person. Yeah. God, I want to speak to that person. And look, I encourage people whenever they listen to different bits of the podcast, if they have found a nugget on their own travels, ping it over, bring it in, you know, we can unfold it, we can unwrap it. And who knows, For some people, they might go, I already knew that. Or for some people, it will be that light bulb moment. So thank you for providing us with another series of light bulbs, mate. I love that. Send all my love to the good lady and the kids and everything like that. I would love for us to be able to get together in London in May, if we can both make it down there. But if we don't,
I'll try my best.
I know our paths will cross again very soon in the future.
Certainly, you can bet on it.
See you soon, all right?
Pete, you look after yourself.
The Firefighters Podcast is a global podcast seeking to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operators. Please support your emergency services wherever you are in the world, and thank you for listening.